let's be honest for a moment. New cars have never been cheap. Not now, not 30 years ago, not 100 years ago. New cars have always been expensive. However, nowadays, because of inflation and other economic circumstances, new cars are extremely expensive. Even cars like a Toyota Aygo X or a Kia Picanto. And those are small city cars with only 70 horsepower. But now you can get a car that is a lot bigger than a city car, offers 100 horsepower as standard for around the same price or even less as a small city car. This is the new Citroën C3 and in this video I will tell you all about it. Alright, let's talk pricing. In the UK, this car will start from just under £18,000. I believe it's £17,790 to be exact. In France and Germany, the car will start from just under €15,000, a 14,990. And in the Netherlands, where I'm from, the car will start from just under €22,000. Now that is a pretty compelling price for a pretty big car. Like I said, small cars are very expensive nowadays, but this is not a very small car. It's a B-segment crossover. You could even call this an SUV. Now you may wonder, how is it possible that Citroën is able to offer a car this size for that kind of money? Well, it is basically because of the platform. This car uses the Smart Car platform. It's a new platform by Stellantis. Stellantis is the main owner of Citroën and Peugeot, Opel, DS, Alfa Romeo and Fiat. And most of those brands are gonna use this Smart Car platform. Like for instance, Fiat will build the new Panda on the Smart Car platform, and Opel or Vauxhall is offering the new Frontera on this platform as well. And because all those brands are sharing the same platform, the price will come down, and that's why this car is pretty cheap. Also because they used a lot of cheap materials, but more on that later. Now if you're going to spend £18,000 on this car, or €15,000 if you live in Germany or France or some other European country, you're going to get the entry-level version obviously, which is the U version. There are basically two versions. You have the U and the Max. Now I have the Max version here, and this version has basically all the bells and whistles that you can get on the C3. So you get some nice 17-inch wheels, you get some nice bumpers, and get a two-tone color as well. This is the base color on the car. It is called Blue Monte Carlo and I have a white roof as well, which is not standard, because if you go for the U version, you get a different color. You get regular 16-inch wheels with hubcaps, and you don't get fancy bumpers as well. And you also don't get a lot of stuff in the interior, but more on that later as well. What you do get as standard is this petrol engine. It's a 1.2 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine producing 100 horsepower, and it is mated to a 6-speed manual. Now this car will do 0 to 62 miles an hour or 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 10.7 seconds, and the top speed is 183 kilometers an hour. Now this is the petrol version obviously, but you can also get the electric version of the new C3, which is called the E-C3. That car has an electric motor producing 113 horsepower, so a little bit more than this petrol engine. However, that car is obviously a little bit heavier, so that car will do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 11 seconds. So just a little bit slower, but I'm pretty sure it will do 0 to 50 kilometers an hour a little bit faster than this version. There's also a hybrid coming up later next year, 2025. The hybrid version will be introduced. That car also has the same 1.2 petrol engine. It is a little bit different compared to this petrol engine because it also has an integrated electric motor that produces 28 horsepower. So if you're willing to wait and willing to spend just a little bit extra cash, you might want to wait for the hybrid powertrain. Not because this powertrain isn't any good, it is actually pretty good, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it when I'm going to drive the car in just a sec. However, the hybrid powertrain is probably just a little bit more comfortable, and it is mated to an automatic. So if you want to have an automatic transmission, you have to wait for the hybrid powertrain or drive the fully electric version. So this is the back end design of the new C3. Just like the front end, you get this black bar here as well with some integrated lines that kind of mimic the Citroën logo. The logo is here on the back as well, and it is kind of big, the logo. It is just as big as my hand. Now the trunk capacity is just a little bit bigger compared to the trunk capacity in the outgoing model. In the outgoing model you had 300 liters of trunk capacity. Now you got 310 liters, so just a little bit bigger. Now the trunk lip is quite high, as you can see. It is almost just as high as my hip, which can be a little bit inconvenient, especially if you got like a bad back, for example, and you got like a heavy suitcase that you want to put in the trunk. It can be a little bit annoying. Now the back seats can fold down in 40-60 configuration, and I'm pretty sure if you try it, you'll be able to manage to fit a mountain bike in the back. Now the back seat offers plenty of room for 3 kids, probably not plenty of room for 3 adults, maybe for short drives. You get 3 headrests, and obviously you get 3 seat belts as well. And you get 2 ISOFIX points as well, on the left seat and on the right seat. Alright, let's discuss the interior. Now if you go for the Max version that I have here, you get this 10-inch infotainment system. If you go for the U version, you don't get anything. You don't get an infotainment system, you don't get this screen, you only get a phone holder. So that is something to keep in mind. If you're planning to go for the entry-level version, you're really gonna get the base version with not a lot of stuff, not even an infotainment system. Now it may work for you if you got like a new phone with a big screen. It may work for you, but I can imagine a lot of people do want to have some sort of screen as standard in their new car. I am really loving this infotainment system because it is very fast. It is actually a lot faster than the infotainment systems I'm used to on other Stellantis cars, like the Jeep Avenger or the Peugeot 208 or 308 even. This system is a lot faster. And I'm pretty sure that is because this system is super simple. There are only like 5 menus. There's a home menu, an audio menu, a phone menu, there's sat nav, and there's a setting menu as well. That's all you get, but if you ask me, it's all you need. You only want to use, for example, the radio and a sat nav. What else do you want to use in a car while you're driving? Alright, maybe the climate control, but the climate control you use by physical buttons, which if you ask me is also a lot better than climate controls that are integrated in an infotainment system, because down here you got a couple of really big physical buttons that are very easy to operate. I don't even have to look down to operate them. I can just find them without looking down, which again is just a lot safer than using climate controls on the infotainment system. Now obviously the fit and finish in this car is not going to be super impressive. You get hard plastics in the door panels, you even get a physical key, and you get a manual parking brake as well, not like an electronic parking brake. You do get some soft material on the dashboard. I'm actually a little bit surprised that you actually get some soft materials, because usually in a car in this segment you only get hard black plastic, but you get some soft gray material here that actually looks, well, it looks pretty decent if you ask me. And I think overall the dashboard is not bad to look at. I actually quite like the dashboard. You also get these big air vents that actually look pretty classy. You also get a head-up display in this car, and you would think that only the Max version would get a head-up display, but no, also the entry-level version of this car, the U version, gets a head-up display as well. Because it's not really a traditional head-up display that would project your speed, for example, on the windscreen, but in fact it's more like a small black panel that is located at the end of the dashboard, and there you can see how fast you're driving. It almost looks like a traditional digital gauge cluster, but I'm pretty sure this is just a more cost-effective setup compared to a digital gauge cluster or a head-up display. Nevertheless, it works fine. It's very easy to see how fast you're going, what your fuel level is, without having to keep your eyes off the road. So it's also safe again. So then let's talk about the suspension setup on this car. Citroën is very proud of their suspension setup on this car. This car has the Citroën Advanced Comfort suspension, and it is for the first time ever that Citroën offers this suspension on one of their lower entry-level models. Now the suspension is standard on the car, so also in the U version you get this suspension setup. Now this suspension setup means you get hydraulic bump stops. Now what are hydraulic bump stops? They are basically liquid-filled cushions, let's put it like that. And when you're driving over big potholes or big bumps, these cushions would basically soften the blow. And as a result, this car is pretty comfortable. But what these cushions also do is stabilize the car after you go over a big bump or a big pothole. So the end result is a comfortable car, but also a car that is more stable. And I have to say, this car is not super comfortable, but it is more comfortable than a regular car in this segment. You can really notice that this car is just a little bit more comfortable than your regular B segment SUV. and also at the same time being pretty stable. It doesn't mean this car is very sporty. You definitely shouldn't drive this car very hard. It is not meant for that. But it is a very planted and overall just a very comfortable and stable car. And that is exactly what you're looking for in a small compact family SUV. Now the powertrain is producing 100 horsepower, which is plenty for a car this size. The car doesn't weigh that much. It only weighs 1200 kilograms, which nowadays is not a lot, especially enough for a car this size, a compact crossover SUV. So 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, 10.7 seconds. It's fine for a car like this. And I really don't feel like I'm lacking any power in this car. Then the transmission, like I said, 6-speed manual as standard. You cannot get an automatic, then you have to wait for the hybrid version. I really like this 6-speed manual. It's a really easy gearbox. It's really easy to shift. It's really hard to stall this car, which may be important for some people. And because it's a 6-speed, it means on the highway you're not making a lot of revs. And this car is actually quite economical. If I'm driving on the highway, I'm only using like 5 or 5.5 liters every 100 kilometers, which is just very economical, especially for a pretty high up car like this. It's a pretty big car, but it doesn't use much fuel. Now the hybrid version will probably be a little bit more economical, probably not on the highway. On the highway it will probably do the same numbers as this petrol version, but in the city limits it will be a bit more economical than this car. So far so good. I really like this car, but obviously there are some downsides to a cheap car like this. Now I already told you, you get a physical key, you get a manual parking brake, you get some hard plastics on the door panels as well. Those are the main cost cuttings, together with the lack of a screen if you go for the entry-level version. You can also notice the wind noise outside, especially if you're driving on the highway. You can really notice that there isn't a lot of sound dampening being used in this car. But overall, I am very surprised by this car. I would have expected this car to feel and to drive a lot cheaper, so to say, than it actually does. This car feels nice to drive. It is very easy to operate. It's very comfortable. And so overall, I am actually pretty impressed by this petrol version. Again, I would have expected this car to feel a lot cheaper than it actually does. Now, do let me know in the comments what you think of this car. Do you think it's a bargain? Or do you think this car looks and feels a little bit on the cheap side? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, hit that subscribe button. And then I'll see you in the next one.